Welcome to Agronomy Moment. I'm your host, Wendell Cohen. We bring in people who agree with me, disagree with me, and above all, are not afraid to say it like it is. Our goal here is to challenge what we think, understand the why behind agronomical advice, and most of all, eliminate the noise in the room that are distractions so we can focus on the information that is relevant to your situation. A moment called now. All living things need the here and now. Crops won't grow with rain next month, sunshine this fall, or the right nutrient applied next year. Decisions to protect the life of living things require us as parents, leaders, and farmers to make decisions for the moment and in the moment. This makes farming fast-paced with limited information to act upon. This podcast is about farmers making decisions in the moment for end results that last not only a month, a season, or year, but a lifetime. Ultimately, even your children's future. Your crop needs a decision in the moment. Your farm needs a decision in the moment. And that's where we come in. Come for the agronomy and stay for the fun. Let's make decisions that increase your potential. Welcome back to Agronomy Moment. We are in our 3 out of 3 videos on pH and base saturation, which is a part of a little larger podcast series in which we're doing on talking about fertility and different aspects, especially the parts that are less known. First video we talked about pH, and I will put a link for you to click on. And then the next one we talked about base saturation, and now in this video here we're going to do a summarization, not so much a summarization actually of what we've talked about, because we feel like you can go and watch those videos, but this is what you can do as a farmer, as a grower on your farm, and we want to dive into the practical things of your number one priorities, and this is what you should do. And that's what we're going to dive into today. Moving on to coming back out of this, what I call the deep dive, let's talk about it from, okay, I'm a farmer, I'm wanting to go out and do something about my farms. Just put together some real brief things that are important to you, John.
First thing I look at, if somebody gives me a call and say, hey, I get this farm, it's not doing what I think it should do. The first thing I'm always going to ask for is I would like a yield map, and I would like a soil test report, the most recent one. When I do that, I look at a yield map for trends in the field. A yield map oftentimes will give you elevation as well. So you can look at topography, you can look at the interaction of water, how it flows through a field, and you can get some of those 30,000 foot view things kind of ingrained in your mind to see if there's something going on in that field from those aspects. But then I need a soil test result to look at that. First thing I'm going to look at when I grab that soil test is I'm going to go straight to that pH line. I'm looking at that pH line. I'm going to see, are we in a zone that's conducive for maximum crop growth? If not, that's one of the first things I feel we need to address, because that drives so much in nutrient availability. It drives so much in water infiltration, water holding capacity of the soil. It goes to, like we talked earlier, our pest levels can change drastically in pH environments. Our effectiveness of herbicides can change. And so if our pH is out of whack, high or low, we need to address that first. And so I'll look at that, then I'll bounce straight over and I'll look at those base saturation levels. I'll look at those, say, are we in a zone which we can work with? Or is there something on these base saturation levels that's giving me an indication to look elsewhere? If I look at a base saturation and it's telling me I'm 35% in the magnesium area, I know we got a tight soil. I know we're going to have water infiltration levels, and I know that that's prohibiting our soils from being flush in calcium, and it's going to it's going to cause an interaction where potassium doesn't become as much available as we need it, although we may have perfectly fine parts per million or pounds per acre represented on that soil test in potassium. So I'm going to look at those. If those things check out, we're happy there.
Yep.
I'm going to jump over to my macronutrients. I'm going to look at phosphorus and potassium in their parts per million and see, are we in a range in which we have enough nutrients in our soil bank that's going to provide us with optimum opportunity to maximize yield. If those are low, obviously we can address that with the fertility program of the operation's choice. If it's a dry spread, if it's strip till, if it's a liquid fertilizer, if that goes into them, into their management, or if it's manure, we can look at that as well. But I'm going to make sure those macros are in place. And then we kind of got a snapshot at that point, what we are working with, what we can do to adjust any of the fertility levels we need, what we can do to maybe increase water infiltration by driving some of that magnesium off with some sort of acidic fertility source like a sulfur, and what we need to do really to maximize production on that farm. And so there's a lot of scenarios we go into and we find those and we start addressing them. But there's equal number of times, Wendell, that I go into a field, look at the soil test results, and we're rocking a 6.5 pH. We got 100 ppm in phosphorus. We got 350 in potassium. Our base saturations are in range, and at that point we start addressing micronutrients or other components of the soil or fertility realm that may not be glaring out on that soil test.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I was thinking is that at some point in our future series here on fertility, I may bring you in on this to talk about those micros, because I have a question on the tip of my tongue as it relates to that of, going down that road, but I'd better not. I better not open up that. Okay. I like that. I like the way you're breaking it down to what we focus on and, making these our number one priority. Here's how we go down there and look at that. Let's also jump down here and talk about lime sources, because it's what we use for adjusting pH up. Tell us just a little bit more what you're talking about, or what you like to see as you look at where we're getting the lime, what kind of lime, and that sort of thing.
The first thing I want everybody to take away from this is that no lime is created equally. Okay, so you could have
no lime
is created equally. They're all different.
Okay.
You could have a quarry on the west side of town and 5 miles away on the east side of town. It's going to have different properties to it. So I always encourage farmers before they lime to get a lime test. So it's going to give you a multitude of different things. And a lot of times, if you're going from a quarry, or if you're going using a liming source that may be a byproduct of some sort of manufacturing, they more than likely already have a test on hand that they can just give you. If not,
yes.
Lime tests are extremely inexpensive. You get one for I'll say $15. That's probably on the high side. You send in about 4 pounds of your lime source, send it into them, get it to test it, and then that'll give us better direction. So when you look at lime sources, you're going to see a few different things on there. You're going to see the calcium carbonate content. You're going to see the magnesium carbonate content. If you're in a situation where you may be already pushing the levels of magnesium in your soil to a high point, those magnesium carbonate or dolomitic lime sources are not going to be something you want to dive into. Typically, they can have 20-25% magnesium in them, so you could be compounding a problem that you already have. That's something we see in my area right here where I live. There's some lime that comes out of off the Mississippi River there. It's a dolomitic lime. It's extremely inexpensive. It's like $1 a ton, and so it doesn't cost anything. And some folks have been using it for quite a while on some heavier clay-based soils, and we see exchange or base saturations of magnesium creeping over 30%. That's a bad day. So it's important
Yeah.
to know what you're putting out there on your field. The other thing it's going to give you the screening. So what percent of lime passes through each mesh screen. So an 8 screen, a 20 screen, a 100 screen. That's going to give you the fineness of your lime. And so when you figure the end result we're trying to get to is an effective neutralizing value, or how much lime it's going to take to neutralize or bring your soil pH up to your desired level. And so the
Yep.
finer the lime, the higher um, your ratio is going to be in that effective neutralizing formulation, and how quick your lime is going to work. So the finer the lime, the higher calcium carbonate content that it has in it, the more lime that passes through like 100 mesh
Okay.
screen, the quicker it's going to go to work, but also the shorter amount of time it's going to last. So if we can get through that formula to know what the screenings of our lime, what the calcium carbonate or magnesium carbonate content of it is, we can put it into a formula. It'll give us our effective neutralizing value. So some high calcium lime sources may have an ENV value that's like a 1.2 or a 1.3. So that meaning based off pure calcium carbonate, it's going to give you about 130% effectiveness versus 100% pure calcium carbonate because of the fineness of it, because of some other properties to it. On the transverse of that, we may see some dolomitic limes or some real rocky, chunky lime that may have a
Yep.
0.65 effective neutralizing value, ENV. At that point, all right, if my recommendation is going to be applied to 1 ton of lime to neutralize my soil, at this point, we're going to need approximately 40% more liming material than what our recommendation is calling for. So there's a lot of things that go into selecting your lime soils. Just know they're not all built the same. They're not all created equal. And
Yep.
Selena can help you with that. I can help somebody with that. But just know that, hey, if it's calling for 2 ton of lime, it's 2 ton of what kind of lime? And do we have
Okay.
access to that kind of lime, or do we need to make adjustments going forward?
Yep. We are very fortunate in our area that we have a lot of lime sources, like different kinds of lime sources in our area. And so if we need to, we can adjust. That is very important and very interesting. I think that I'm going to keep that as we go forward because, like John mentioned, you mentioned there that the tendency is to go find your most economical source and look at all lime as just being a commodity instead of being that it's actually different. And so plays a huge part. Selena, you have anything to add?
No, I think it's important, like what John said, what you said there, kind of just knowing your end goal, and your end
Yeah.
goal on different fields of your operations probably different, and keeping that in mind, as John said, not all lime is created equal. So having opportunity to be flexible, and try to be flexible at least with that application is probably something good to keep in the back of our minds, because
Yep.
dealing with different pHs and things, just different goals everywhere, and could have low pH and on one farm, high pH on another, or more moderate pH. And so obviously there our lime source is pretty important on what we end up putting there.
Yeah, exactly. And John, before you got on the joined us here, we were kind of laughing because a lot years and years ago, I think the tendency was for a lot of people, at least in our area, is to add lime as a tax write-off at the end of a year, and that has resulted in some out of the ordinary values in fields as it relates to pH and magnesium or calcium. Like we're running high, and so I'm just going to mention there. I don't know if you have anything to say, John, on that, but it seems very difficult to bring something down versus take it back up.
That would be the more difficult. That would be the more difficult situation to be in. If we got to drive magnesium levels down in a soil, um,
Yeah.
it's a long-term process, and it doesn't come very cheaply to do that. Um,
Yes.
Another typical one in soils that I see sometimes, especially in heavy manured areas, is a high, almost toxic level of phosphorus in the soils. If you think about maybe an operation that has a lot of livestock, especially if it's confined livestock, cattle under roof or pigs, and maybe
Yeah.
they don't. Here's an extreme example. You got 50,000 hogs, but you only farm 500 acres. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you've been running a lot of manure on your acres for a lot of years. Uh, that's an easier situation to get out of. All we got to do is remove. We got to have a sink for that phosphorus, and we got to remove it from the soil so we can use rye cover crop. We can bale our stalks. We can start drawing that down. But when you get into one of these positively charged ion that's out of whack, calcium, magnesium, it long term and it's expensive.
Yeah. Very good. Is there anything, John, that you would have to add to our topic today, or something that we missed, or something of interest, maybe even a story or something you've experienced that relates to this today?
Yeah, the thing with soil fertility is that there's a million different components that go into it, and it varies farm by farm. And at the end of the day, when I sit down and look at soil test results, almost every soil we have can be I'll say fixed, So if we're in a situation where we
Yeah.
got something out of whack, we can fix it. But what I always want to look at the economics behind it, because my job is not out here to make perfect soils. It's not out here to fix every soil that there is. It's to provide
Yeah.
recommendations. It's going to put the customers, the farmers, into an opportunity where they can maximize yield with the soil they have, and at the end of the day, hopefully be profitable on it. And so profitability drives a 95% of the recommendations that I'm going to make. And so even if we get into a bad situation on a soil, uh, we can do things from a management perspective that are going to keep it relatively economical to do. And so
Yeah.
I always like to ask, is this a farm you own? Is this a rental farm that may have a good long-term relationship, and you're locked into that farm for a while? Or is this a farm that you picked up? It may be a 1, 2, 3 year lease. Maybe it goes to cash rent auction. Maybe it's a development piece, and we don't want to invest a lot of long-term solutions into that farm. Then we can address it in other ways by maybe implementing different fertility applications. A lot of times in
Yeah.
areas where we go to 1 or 2% base saturation, and it's a short-term lease, or maybe it's only a 1 year thing, man, if we have the ability to strip till on that, and we can flood that root zone with the fertility we need, a lot of times we can overcome
Yeah.
some of those negative factors on the soil test. So at the end of the day, Wendell, it's a lot of this plays back into economics of it. A lot of it plays
Yeah.
into what the end game of the farmer is going to be, if they are preserving this land, if they're trying to make it better to pass on to future generations, if they're on a short-term lease. Those are two very different situations, and we can make economics work on both of them to try and maximize yield out there.
Yeah. That makes sense. I really, really like what your comments that you made there towards the end is we got to keep the agronomics and the economics of the farming in mind, because at the end of the day, that's what everyone's here for. At least that's what we should be here for. So, very good point. John, I have very much enjoyed this, and I would like to thank you again for coming on here. You've been very helpful. Thank you for your generosity with your time here today.
You're welcome, Wendell. I appreciate being on here, and like always, if you got somebody that wants more information or somebody I could help out, shoot them my way. You got my email, you got my phone number, so don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay, sounds good. I do really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John.
All right. Thanks, guys.
That's it. That's a wrap. That's video 3 of 3 for talking about pH, base saturation, and what we can do as growers. And so, while that's it for this time, be on the lookout for more topics as we come out here in the near future as it relates to fertility and different things like that. Our intention is to talk more and bring in some people to give us more clarity in this arena. So, thank you for watching. See ya. If you want alerts on what we are finding in the field, go to topagservices.com/signups to receive alert, or subscribe to our YouTube channel. It is our goal to bring you the most recent and advanced information possible. If you have any questions or feedback, feel free to reach out to us anytime. We also ask you that you give us a like and follow our channel wherever you listen to your podcasts or watch these videos. This ultimately helps us reach more people like you.
Hello?
Hey, this has been Wendell Cohen, your show host. Thank you to all who made this show possible. This show is over. See ya.